Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where everything is connected. Good to see you all. The early chat is popping. The early chat is going strong. I'm glad to see you all here, everybody. Please remember to like the video and to make sure you're still subscribed. That's the drill. Osama, what's up? Osama writes, anything else you're interested in is not going to happen if you can't breathe the air and drink the water. Don't sit this one out. Do something. And a quote from Carl Sagan from 1985. You are by accident of fate alive at an absolutely critical moment in the history of our planet. Carl Sagan. Yep. Exciting times. Collapse underway. Well, actually, I'm going to end up changing the title of this video because the article that I was going to kick the video off with, I realized I had already read it. So, and it's, it's good information, but I don't feel like reading it again. I don't feel like going through it again. It's not new news. But, just for conversation's sake, the collapse is underway. Things are already looking dicey for a lot of people. Lightning Rod said oil is doing great. Yeah, I know. I wish I would have invested in some oil stocks earlier this week. I know that sounds kind of evil. But considering the fact that we're all, many are scratching for pennies, I would take some pennies off the dying carcass of the fossil fuel industry. I know you might not appreciate that sentiment. You call me clickbait, Kevin? No way, man. No representation. Anthony Davis says it's actually a cold day in hell here in Dallas, 40 degrees this morning. So having a hot coffee to stay warm. Yeah, there's a serious, well, I guess what's been happening over the last few winters is that high Arctic temperatures are pushing cold air out of the Arctic into the southern latitudes or more southerly latitudes. So we are getting, basically a polar vortex situation in spring for a lot of the West and, the western part of the states. And then the eastern part, southeast and the east, are unseasonably warm. So yeah, it's very cool here, cool and rainy. And that has actually led to some thunderstorms. Very quickly, just wanted to update 71 in NorCal. Really? Jeez. Dang. Are you inland or are you on the coast? Are you Redding or are you Arcata? Or lower than that? More south than that? Jesse Daly, exactly. So yeah, real quick, there was some serious tornado activity in the Southwest. Just a few things off of ARD. And then there's a post from James Spann. The death toll from severe storms yesterday across the deep south is up to 17, 11 in Mississippi, 6 in North Georgia. So far, no fatalities reported in Alabama, but there are a number of injuries with damage in at least 24 counties. So, yeah, that's happening. Um, there's also high temps in other locales around the globe, of course. So inland gold country. Okay, that makes sense. It generally gets pretty warm there. Although I don't know if it gets that warm this time of year, but maybe that's normal. I don't know. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of cover, you know, how this pandemic is progressing and affecting us um, in many different ways, economically, climatically. Um, there's all kinds of things going on. So just an update: we're almost at 2 million cases worldwide. 118,000 deaths. I don't know if you're seeing this. Maybe make sure you're seeing this. Almost 2 million cases, 118,000 deaths, and counting. The again, this is the part that's weird to me. The discrepancy between the rate of death in the closed cases and the serious or critical percentage in the active cases. So, um, I'm not, I don't know what that points to. It's like there are people who are recovering, of course. I don't know, where's this discrepancy happening, because it's pretty large. 21% of the people that either recover or die. So I don't know why that is. I don't know if there's something nefarious going on in the information. I'm not quite sure. But we'll keep looking at that. Now it's grown to 21%. It was originally a few weeks ago at like 15%. I remember when it was maybe 13%. Am I right? A few weeks ago, it was at 13%. Now it's 21%. USA leading the charge with all the cases. We still are, the death to case rate in the USA is still low comparatively compared to Spain, Italy, other spots. UK seems to have taken a leap in the death rate to case rate. I mean, they have a few more cases than China, yet they have triple the fatality. So what is going on there? That seems to be a pretty big spike. Um, Again, Iran just kind of staying, continuing along the path that they're on. Um, but this is, look how many cases there are now in Romania, Norway, Australia, Denmark, Czech, Pakistan. Heard that it was starting to get into African countries, South Africa. Um, Singapore way down on the list, even though they had a resurgence, is what I have heard. Thailand still down on the list, somewhat. Um, yeah, and on and on. On it goes. This is a worldwide pandemic and affecting countries everywhere. So again, this guy, we can't seem to get away from this guy, this Bill Gates guy. Interestingly, the video that I showed you the other day when he was talking about the fact that that there wouldn't be any travel, or lockdowns would pretty much, or no public gatherings would be happening until there was a vaccine. That's what I wanted to say. They were implying, so I guess there's kind of a theory going on in the right wing conspiracy theory circles that this has to do with climate change. That this is, of course, this is engineered, that this is a bioweapon. You know, all of it relies on that assumption that this is engineered, and it's engineered in order to deal with climate change. Like they're trying to lock us all down, and this is really, you know, actually a response to climate change, which is very, very. It's an interesting theory. Um, I don't really see it. You know, I don't see any merit in that. But it's just obviously the environment is quite happy that we're all locked down. But if I'd have to say, if the governments of the world, or if a couple governments actually conspired to, you know, destroy their economies and lock everybody down in order to deal with the environment, I'd say that's pretty far fetched, considering that they don't want to deal with climate change. Considering that they're doing everything they can to keep the fossil fuel industry going, to keep, you know, industrial activity going, in order to keep GDPs rising. All of that, you know, that nobody wants to inflict economic damage upon themselves, and no country would do that willingly. And to the idea that countries conspired to do this it's fairly ridiculous. Anyways, this is interesting though. Talking about a vaccine certificate. Again, I don't know how much of a on the conspiracy side this is, but we'll listen to this.
Check this out. What does Bill Gates want? Eventually, what we'll have to have is certificates of who's a recovered person, who's a vaccinated person, because you don't want people moving around the world where you'll have some countries that won't have it under control. Sadly, you don't want to completely block off the ability for those, you know, people to go there and come back and move around. Okay, I'm going to play that again, guys. Listen to this.
We don't need to play that again. Anyways, that's exactly the kind of thing that I was talking about maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. And people have already extrapolated this scenario into this situation, right? They've already said, oh, you're going to have a vaccine in order to get work, in order to get a job, in order to go to school, in order to travel, in order to get a passport. And I'm kicking myself for not getting my passport already, because I know that I've needed to. Like, everybody has to have a real ID in the United States. I think it's October, so you can either have a real ID or get a passport. It's a much more stringent process in order to get this ID or get your passport. So, and I heard that they were not issuing passports right now, or they weren't processing passports. I don't know if that's true. But anyways, imagine a day very, very soon when you're going to be required to have this vaccine in order to get a passport, in order to do much of anything. So Bill Gates, confirming for us that, yeah, this is the thing that they're talking about, thinking about, and I'm sure getting ready to act upon. So, if you're worried that governments are going to start setting up systems of control and, just not, widespread surveillance because of this scenario, then yes, that's a done deal. That's going to be happening. Anthony Davis says COVID ID cards. Yeah, right. Russ Taylor says microchipping ID certification and all on a chip. Yep. Yeah, if they are processing passports, I would go ahead and get a passport. I probably will try to do that before they implement whatever it is they're going to try to implement. Yeah, that actually, this video right here actually makes me extremely frightened because Bill Gates is like, yeah, oh yeah, we're going to have a certificate. Where people are just going to have this thing in order to travel because we can't open up, borders or countries or whatever. We don't know who is infected. Yeah. Get ready for that craziness to roll out. This has been an ongoing story. I'm just kind of moving around today, guys. I'm gonna just kind of drift through a bunch of different stories that are happening, things that I wanted to cover. There's been a massive fire in the Ukraine around Chernobyl, around the nuclear plant. So this is not cool. Hundreds of personnel supported by multiple fire engines and special aircraft were filmed fighting a forest fire that broke out in Chernobyl in the exclusion zone, reportedly stirring up radiation levels in the abandoned area. Already on nationwide lockdown because of the COVID-19 outbreak, Ukraine is dealing with wildfires that have engulfed the so-called alienation zone set up after the 1986 Chernobyl disaster. The fires have easily consumed the grass, brushes, forest, and trees that had dried out following a warm end to winter, right? So this is climate change related, guys. Russia and the Ukraine and parts of northern Europe had an extremely warm winter where they didn't get a winter. They didn't get snow. They didn't get, or they got very, very little snow, and they got a lot of warm temperatures. And this created conditions for a wildfire, in April. Let's see. A Rupley video made public on Sunday shows a fire engine making its way through post-apocalyptic Chernobyl. Let's watch this a little bit. The road is flanked by flames and thick smoke, while some parts of the forest look completely burnt out. Okay, we're going to stop watching that. This is the important part. Authorities insist the fire doesn't pose any risk to the public. Of course, whenever they insist that it doesn't pose any risk to the public, that's when you should run away screaming. However, the head of the Ukraine State Ecological Inspection claims radiation readings are now 16 times higher than normal within the brush fire area. All right, good times. We're gonna see a very active brush fire season in Russia, Eastern Europe, I'm sure, in Siberia. They had warm weather all winter long, and they still have warmer than average temp. And March temperatures were much higher than average for that region, so they're probably not going to have a very fun summer. But more on the fun with nuclear power to come in this video. This is incredibly frightening. Again, the excuse of the pandemic is being used for all sorts of ridiculous rollbacks of regulation. FDA suspends routine food inspections amid coronavirus pandemic. This is wild. About 77% of the U.S. food supply is regulated by the FDA. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic and efforts to flatten the curve, the Food and Drug Administration is halting all routine surveillance inspections of facilities that manufacture food or other FDA-regulated products. Do you feel safer, guys? How does this make you feel about sheltering at home but not knowing what the hell you're putting in your mouth? The federal agency announced this on March 18th, so this is quite a while ago. I know that they were rolling back other regulations, mostly concerned with emissions and dumping of pollutants, but this one was one that I hadn't heard about until yesterday. This change, which comes a week after the FDA announced the suspension of most foreign inspections, affects. They're not doing foreign inspections either. Oh, awesome. Affects domestic inspections traditionally conducted every few weeks based on risk analysis. In lieu of these inspections, the FDA is considering other ways to conduct inspectional work while maintaining public safety and protecting both factory and FDA staff. This can include, among other things, evaluating records in lieu of conducting an on-site inspection on an interim basis when travel is not permissible when appropriate. All right. They will continue. Han says the FDA will continue to address critical for-cause inspections, those involving specific problems that have come to the FDA's attention, and to respond to natural disasters, outbreaks, and other public health emergencies under its purview. I don't feel good about this at all. Not on any level. So now we have to worry about random problems in our food supply and possible contamination, public contamination, right? Because they haven't been doing these inspections. So good news, everybody. All right, moving on. We're just going to roll through some of these news stories. Don't bail out airlines, say climate campaigners. The problem is that it's already done. It's a done deal. They've already bailed them out. So I don't know what you could do to stop this now. More than 250 trade unions and environment groups have signed an open letter opposing plans for bailing out the aviation industry. The letter to governments demanding that any bailouts lead to better labor conditions and a cut in emissions. Maybe they're just talking about the UK. I don't know. They say aviation should make changes already evident in other sectors amid the coronavirus lockdown. Thanks to a long-standing treaty, international aviation has largely been able to make its own rules. And that's always good, for the environment and good for human beings when an industry can make its own rules. The campaigners say this must change now that firms are asking for new favors. Favors, spelled really fancy there, the way that they spell it in the UK, from governments. Their informal group is called Stay Grounded. How about Safer Grounded? Safer while grounded. Its spokesperson Magdalena Heweiser said, for decades the aviation industry has avoided contributing meaningfully to global climate goals and resisted the mere suggestion of taxes on fuel or tickets. Now airlines, airports, and manufacturers are demanding huge and unconditional taxpayer-backed bailouts. We cannot let the aviation industry get away with privatizing profits in the good times and expect the public to pay for its losses in the bad times. Well, that just makes all kinds of sense, though. The Aviation Association, IATA, has conducted what it called an aggressive global campaign aimed at persuading governments to introduce measures softening the effects of the virus emergency. Honestly, most airlines could probably just be nationalized at this point in time and restructured. But they're not going to do that, of course. It's asking for immediate reduction of all charges and taxes, deferral of any planned increases in charges, blah, 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 stuff like that. Okay, sorry. Several nations have agreed to some of the industry's demands, but in the UK, the Chancellor Rishi Sunak has told airlines to look to its own shareholders to keep them running. Well, very good. UK airports, meanwhile, are asking ministers to grant them a suspension of air passenger duty and other measures when the crisis is over. Excuse me. Stay Grounded has a very different recipe for a successful outcome at the end of the crisis. It wants to focus on protecting workers, not shareholders, making aviation firms contribute. You're not going to green the aviation industry. The only thing you can really do is cut demand and cut, the actual activity itself, which right now is already cut way down. So now is a really good time to possibly implement some kind of rules about how frequently planes are in the air or how many people can fly or whatever. I don't know what that would look like. I'm not really sure. I haven't really spent a long time in my brain trying to come up with like a solution to the airline industry, but other than just grounding those planes. Again, if we were in an emergency, uh, let's say we were in an emergency, climate response to climate change. If we had elected an extremely progressive president or prime minister or what have you, and they're like, we're going to implement an emergency style response to climate change. Well, that response would look something like what we're doing now, which is grounding most air travel, possibly grounding air travel, except for maybe government officials or military, personnel, or emergency responders, and possibly making just just random whenever you want to go travel in an airplane, make that very, very difficult to come by. Of course, you'd still have, very wealthy people going, well, I still got a plane, I can still go. But yeah, an emergency response to climate change would look like putting some kind of limits to how many planes could be in the air. And the limits in a realistic response would look like something that we have right now, which is maybe 10% of the flights flying, right? Knocking it down 90%. Now, you would never, for whatever reason, an emergency response to climate change, if you brought up something like that, people would lose their minds. As Extinction Rebellion ran into, last year when they were getting a lot of headlines and they were on TV a lot and they were, bringing up the subject of climate change, on national television in the UK. And they were like, you're going to, cancel all air travel, or you're going to, ground all the planes. And oh my God, how could this possibly happen? Well, here it is. It's happening. What a great day to just transition this into a response to climate change. Of course, not a lot of people are going to be very on board with that. So moving on. We're just gonna keep on rolling, guys. Mountains of waste menace Florida's Swiss cheese aquifers. I had no idea this was going on. And again, another environmental disaster just waiting to be unleashed. In Florida, rising above the flat landscape of west central Florida are towering ponds of acidic wastewater sitting atop mounds of a mildly radioactive material called phosphogypsum. These substances are byproducts of fertilizer manufacturing, an industry powered by Florida's massive deposits of an important crop nutrient, phosphate. Florida has 25 gypsum stacks today that collectively hold 1 billion tons of phosphogypsum, which contain traces of uranium, radon, and radium. 22 of these open-air stacks are in the region just east of Tampa Bay called Bone Valley, named for the plethora of fossils found among the phosphate there. Most are kept far away, enough away from Gulf beaches and city centers that it's easy for residents to ignore the imposing dumps. But in 2016, disaster struck, and I was just about to say, I think I remember something about one of these holding ponds or stacks being breached. 2016, disaster struck a gypsum stack in Mulberry, Florida, in the form of a 150-foot wide hole in the earth. A sinkhole underneath the stack, operated by phosphate giant Mosaic Company, opened up and sucked 215 million gallons of contaminated water into the Floridan aquifer, mixing with the region's source of drinking water. Delicious. The aquifer is like Swiss cheese, so it's all interconnected. Everything's connected, people. Contaminants can move extremely fast through the aquifer system, said Robert Brinkman, author of the book Florida Sinkholes, Science and Policy, and a geology professor at Hofstra University. After pumping as much of the wastewater back out of the ground as possible and taking thousands of samples, Mosaic determined there was no off-site contamination. Well, They sound nice and friendly with a name like Mosaic. 4 years ago, experts and activists say that not enough has changed about the way gypsum stacks are managed. Active stacks, like the one in Mulberry, continue to grow taller, while closed ones sit idle, grass concealing the gypsum below. Local communities are still just one sinkhole, hurricane, or breached wall away from experiencing another environmental calamity like the ones that have plagued gypsum stacks since the 1990s. So this isn't just a singular problem. This isn't a one-time problem. This is an ongoing problem. I'm just going to go through some of the breaches since the 90s. July 1994, sinkhole in Mulberry drained gypsum stack pond water. That was 1994, and then that happened in 2016. December 1997, storm in Mulberry ruptured a gypsum stack dike, releasing 56 million gallons of water into the Lafayette River, killing more than 1 million fish. September 2001, tropical storm Gabriel dumped a foot of rain on a gypsum stack in Palmetto. Oh, my mic's been low. Sorry. Leading Florida's Environment Agency to release 500,000 gallons of partially treated wastewater into Tampa Bay. September 2004, Hurricane Francis ruptured a gypsum stack dike in Riverview, allowing 65 million gallons of wastewater to flow into the creek leading to Tampa Bay. December 2009, sinkhole in White Springs drained 84 million gallons of gypsum stack wastewater into the Floridan aquifer. So multiple times, this is an ongoing problem. What do we do with all our waste? Nobody knows. Well, if that doesn't scare you enough, prepare to be terrified. Terrified. Atomic workers warn that the COVID-19 pandemic may threaten nuclear reactor disaster. Nuclear safety cannot be shortchanged, especially in the midst of an outbreak. So I've already read through this one, and I'll read a little bit of it. But basically, there's the way that the workers at nuclear plants have to work. They have to work in close proximity to each other, and there's been outbreaks at some nuclear plants. There's not enough trained nuclear workers in the pool of people that can work on these power plants. So that's a big problem too. They travel around the country and work at different plants because there's just not enough locally trained people to do it. That doesn't sound like a bad situation at all. Sounds totally fine. The COVID pandemic has thrown America's atomic reactor industry into lethal chaos, making a major disaster even more likely. Reports from terrified workers at a Pennsylvania reactor indicate vital precautions needed to protect them may not even be possible. Nationwide, with falling demand and soaring prices for nuke-generated electricity, the pandemic casts a dark shadow over reactor operations and whether frightened neighbors will allow them to be refueled or repaired. America's 96 remaining atomic reactors are run by a coveted pool of skilled technicians who manage the control rooms, conduct repairs, load and unload nuclear fuel. Because few young students have been entering the field, the core of about 100,000 licensed technicians has been, like the reactors themselves, rapidly aging while declining in numbers. Work has stopped in the last 2 U.S. reactors under construction due to the pandemic's impact. Well, that's yet another great silver lining of this situation. Licensing is virtually impossible. Of critical importance, every 18 to 24 months, each reactor must shut for refueling and repairs. Itinerant crews of 1,000 to 1,500 technicians travel to 58 sites in 29 states, usually staying 30 to 60 days. Some 54 reactors have been scheduled for refuel or repairs in 2020, but there is no official organized program to test the workers for COVID as they move around the country. The industry is now using the coronavirus pandemic to rush through a wide range of deregulation demands. Of course they are. Among them is a move to allow radioactive waste to be dumped into municipal landfills. Guys, This is insanity. The NRC may also certify skipping vital repairs, escalating the likelihood of a major breakdown and meltdowns. Nearly all U.S. reactors are designed and built in the pre-digital age more than 30 years ago. Most are in advanced decay. Atomic expert David Lochbaum, formerly with the NRC, warns that failure risks from longer work hours and deferred repairs could be extremely significant and could vary from reactor to reactor depending on their age and condition. Industry-wide, the pandemic has brought working conditions to the brink of collapse. At Pennsylvania's Limerick generating station, workers say they are terrified that the plant has become a breeding ground, a complete cesspool for the coronavirus. I'm in a constant state of paranoia, one technician told Carl Hessler Jr. of Montco Court News. The potential increase of COVID-19 cases from the 1,400 new workers not observing social distancing is staggering. They're talking about the Limerick nuclear generating station. Where is this located? I'm not sure. Yeah, anyways, the Limerick plant should be shut until the COVID-19 pandemic is over. Indian Point in New York City, north of New York City, will be shut permanently on April 28th. That's good news. Iowa's Dwayne Arnold will be closed in December. That's good news as well. This is scary, though. In California, Ground Zero may be Pacific Gas and Electric's two 35-year-old reactors at Diablo Canyon. PG&E is bankrupt for the second time in 2 decades and recently pleaded guilty to 85 felonies from the fires its faulty wires sent raging through Northern California, killing 84 people. In 2010, a faulty PG&E gas line exploded in San Bruno, killing 8 people. Surrounded by earthquake faults, Diablo's construction prompted more than 10,000 civil disobedience arrests, the most at any U.S. reactor. PG&E now admits its 2 Diablo nukes will lose more than $1.2 billion this year, more than $3.4 million a day. So PG&E may be taken over by the state. More than 1,000 workers are slated in early October to refuel and repair Unit 1, which the NRC says is dangerously embrittled. Whether local residents concerned about both a nuclear accident and the spread of coronavirus will let them into the country remains to be seen, or let them into the county. So is whether they'll still be operating by then. Frightening news. So lots of fallout from this pandemic situation. I've covered a pretty wide umbrella of things going on and possibilities for addressing some situations. Considering where we are is where we are, but are we going to really be able to stop industrial activity or industrial civilization from grinding the gears back into operation when all this supposedly goes away? Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, yeah, the economy is tanking. Ecological problems abound with the lessening of these regulations. However, for the most part, the environment is getting a break from humans. And I can't help but applaud that. I got a super chat in here from Rich Monroe. Thank you so much, Rich. Or Richard. I'm sorry. If you prefer Richard, I won't shorten. TCR Galaxy says landfills, Kevin. Landfills. Rosa Remen, feed all that waste to the homeless. Delicious. Slap Happy 813 says toxic turkey. Yeah. I mean, it's so frightening. It's funny. I have to laugh with you on that. Void says the alphabet is satanic. Tell me more, Void. Tell me more. Yeah, we TCR Galaxy sums it up with we are so fucked. Indeed we are, unless we can have some kind of coordinated organized response to this this poison that is our society, right? Stephen Davidson says, you can bet that the powers that be did not shut down everything to save a few peasants. This is a sinister plot all around, methinks. Methinks I agree with you. It certainly wasn't, the idea that all this happened for the good of the environment or the good of the biosphere or the good of, regular people somewhere. It's like just laughable. I can't stop from laughing at that idea. Kuro Hikes, thanks for the super chat. McPherson ain't so crazy now. I mean, who are always considered the craziest in society? The most persecuted people are the ones that tell the truth. The people that are assassinated or bumped off or taken out, the people that have too much truth on the tongue. I was thinking about Socrates, right? Why was Socrates killed? Because, he ran around and exposed how stupid people were, especially very powerful people. Exposed how little they knew about anything. Exposed them for not knowing anything at all about anything. So that really pissed them off. They had to take, Socrates had to be eliminated. And it just goes right on through history, right? We know the story. I'm also rewatching Malcolm X. The Denzel Washington Malcolm X movie. Again, when people have too much truth on the tongue, you become crazy real quick, and you also become a very dangerous person to people who have their hands on the levers of power. Had Valmer says, yay, my wife is out of 2-week quarantine today. Congratulations to you and your wife. Enjoy. It results from an increase in births, fertility rate, a decline in the mortality rate, and an increase in people summing it up. Yes, I can say that sentence. Yeah, actually, in the early chats, one of the very first comments, I think it was Boiled Rope Lamppost, said, just gave the stat that we have, what is it? Born every single day? 350,000 people born every day, 360. And 150,000 die. So we have 200 plus humans a day, 200,000 plus humans a day. That is some rapid growth. Prudhomme, Gene, those who rise to the top are those who plot, scheme, etc. Psychopaths. Oh, that sounds good. Gene, what was the name of that documentary? Do you have a name? Gene says, last night I watched a wonderful documentary about organic farming in Cuba. I would like to watch said documentary if I could find it. Get out of here. Steve, one of Graham Elwood's videos was removed by YT last night. I wonder which one. Yeah, so Graham actually is doing really good work. I mean, Graham is progressive, but he's definitely more on the conspiratorial side of the progressive spectrum. He covers a lot of politics, but he also kind of does some deep dives into some weird stories, especially Jeffrey Epstein stories. And I'm about to actually cover... The reason why I'm curious is because I'm about to cover a story that he's kind of already covered, but I want to do it. I want to cover it myself just because it's interesting, but it's also very scary if they're removing his videos. I don't know that I necessarily want one of my videos removed, but, what price journalism? I'm going to have to go suss that out. And I'm going to have to go, guys. Thank you so much for joining in the chat. I have reached my time limit. They cut his live stream and gave him a strike. What for? Yeah, no, I like Graham a lot. Well, I'll go suss this out. But thank you so much, guys, for joining in the chat. I will be back tomorrow, the same bat time. Thank you for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. Wow, that's wild. Just answering your questions video, huh? Yeah, I know they've been messing with Graham a lot. I know that they have. But because he's been doing stuff about Epstein, and I'm pretty sure that's why. They really don't like any kind of investigations into the pedophile rings. Like, they get really pissed about that. Anyways, all right, guys. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow. And peace out.